Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone, and we need to have a talk about the New York Knicks. I just watched them play against the Celtics in this early Sunday matinee game, and they got destroyed. Now, they kept it close for part of it, specifically in the third quarter. They made this big-time comeback, and it's like, oh, are the Knicks going to go ahead and make a statement? And they still end up losing by double digits, and a majority of the matchup, it was a 10-plus Celtic lead. It was 15, it was 20. It was not very close for a majority of the day, and that continues a concerning trend for New York all throughout the season. Now, overall in the year, they've been pretty good. They've got a great record of 37-20. Cat has been awesome, arguably the best season of his career. Brunson's been amazing as well, continuing his trajectory that he's been on over the past couple of Knicks seasons. But the big problem is that they just don't stand a chance against the elite teams. If I asked you, who are the three best teams in the NBA right now? You probably should say it's some combination of the Celtics, the Thunder, and the Cavaliers. Those are the three top-tier contenders. Most people tell you on any contender list, they belong there. Against those three teams this season, the Knicks are 0-7. They have gotten obliterated by those teams basically anytime they faced off against them. 118-105 was today against the Celtics, 131-104 last time they played Boston, and the first game of the season, it was 132-109 in favor of the Celtics. The two times they played the Cavs, they managed to lose once only by single digits, 110-104, and then the following time they lost 142-105, a 37-point loss, and against the Thunder, they lost 117-107, and that was after they had a big lead in that game in Oklahoma City. And then when they played at MSG, a game that I personally was at, it was 126-101, and that one was pretty much never close. They've not only lost every game that they've played so far against the elite of the elite in the NBA, but they're losing these games by an average margin of 20.1 points per game. That's pretty scary if you're a Knicks fan who wants to see this team compete for a championship, because if you're going to win the title, you're going to have to go through not just one of Boston or Cleveland, but you'll have to go through both of them, because at the moment, you'd play the Celtics in the second round and likely face off against the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals, and if you get through all of that, you're likely going to have to face the Oklahoma City Thunder coming out of the Western Conference. Those three teams are the roadblocks for a Knicks team that went all in, that was trying to become a championship contender, and they haven't even looked like they were in the same league as those top three teams when they've played them so far this season. Let's talk about some of the biggest things that have popped up in these matchups. The number one thing is the defense is just not even close to good enough against these top tier opponents. It holds up well enough when you play good to like pretty good teams, but when you play elite, they just cannot consistently get stops. They're so slow on rotations, and it leads them giving up a million open threes or just straight up layups. Pretty much in all of these games that they've lost against these top tier opponents, somebody has torched the hell out of them. I know in that first game against the Thunder and OKC, Aaron Wiggins had one of the best games of his career. Then they play in MSG, and Isaiah Joe has probably the best game of his time with the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Cavs shot 51.4% from deep against them. Today, it was Derek White torching them. Peyton Pritchard had 6 threes last game. The game prior, the first one of the season, Tatum had 8. Derek White had 6. Jaylen Brown had 5. Drew had 4. Al Horford had 3. You just can't really ever stop anybody from getting downhill if you're the Knicks. The point of attack is so weak. And when you play these teams that have like Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Shea, Jalen Williams, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, guys that are so good at getting downhill and finding shooters out in the perimeter, it's just so easy to beat up on the Knicks defense. You attack, you get a couple of rotations, boom, somebody's wide open for a three. And sure, they might miss it now, but they're not going to miss it after the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth time. I remember specifically when I was watching the Thunder at MSG, there were like boos that were raining down every time Isaiah Joe got a new wide open three. And there was someone behind me that kept yelling, why is he open? How does he keep getting open? And that's just kind of been the way that the Knicks have been this season, is they give up a lot of threes. They're not very good at stopping anybody down low either, so then they have to pack the paint a bit more, and it leads to more open threes. If you have a pretty decent shooter, you're probably going to end up seeing them torch the Knicks. In fact, if you have a shooter who's in a bit of a slump, there's a good chance they could break out of it against the Knicks, and they have the offense to offset a lot of that against lesser opponents. But when you play these top three teams, even if you can put up a billion points, at some point you have to get stops or they're just going to steamroll you, and they can't do that. The third quarter when the Knicks made that comeback is a good example of what they can do at times when they really lock in. They're fighting hard over screens. They went a little bit smaller and they were creating a bunch of chaos, forcing some turnovers, just making the Celtics kind of uncomfortable, and that's what you want to see more of. But the problem is the Knicks just don't have the depth, the bodies to continue to play at that frenetic pace. They get really worn out. They just don't overall have the individual defenders to continue to keep that up. And against a team like the Celtics, who just has talent on talent and counters on counters, you can't really beat them consistently. The Celtics went double big with Al Horford and Luke Kornet, or it was Porzingis and Kornet. Like, they always had two bigs out there, and they were just getting offensive rebound after offensive rebound, and the Knicks guys weren't doing a good job of boxing out, and suddenly the lead went from, it was around 4, I believe, to back up to a 17 and 18 point game by the time that I blinked. I went to go tweet like, hey, the Knicks are coming back, and suddenly I couldn't do that anymore because it was just out of reach. And part of this is just the Celtics being a juggernaut, but a lot of it is also weaknesses with this Knicks team. The depth is a major concern. Mitchell Robinson coming back will help, but he's not going to fix that issue alone. Sure, you can maybe go double big and that will give you some more versatile looks, but I'm just not trusting Mitchell Robinson, who hasn't played all season and is extremely injury prone, to make that big of an impact. I do think he'll help with the rebounding. That's an area where they really miss a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein, because last year they were the 5th best overall rebounding team in the league, and now they're 23rd ranked on that end. And again, you see that when the Celtics go double big and they just annihilate them on the glass. It also is concerning, though, that 2 of the major additions they've made in recent history with Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby, they were supposed to help them be this high-level defensive squad specifically to match up against the Celtics. They got those 2 guys to have wing defenders for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and it hasn't worked whatsoever. And overall in the season, OG has been pretty good defensively, but I don't think he's been this clear all-defensive caliber wing like they wanted him to be when they acquired him. Mikal Bridges is no longer the defender he once was over in Phoenix, and I felt like that might change a good bit when he came over to New York with less overall offensive responsibility than when he was in Brooklyn, but I've still been underwhelmed with what he's done so far this season defensively. You've then got Cat as a rim protector, and that's going to be a problem. Again, maybe Mitchell Robinson helps out with some of that, but I'm really not counting on it. Overall in the season, they've given up the 9th most points in the paint, ranked 20th overall on the defensive end this season in terms of defensive rating. You're just not going to win that way against the best teams in the league, against decent playoff teams, sure, but when you play the elite of the elite, 3 of whom you're likely going to have to play to try and win a championship, you just don't stand a chance like this. Also, just another thing of note, why is Karl-Antony Towns still in this game down 20 with 2 minutes to go? When he hurt his knee not too long ago, he hurt it, he was yelling out in pain, grabbing at it, laying down on the bench, very clearly uncomfortable. He went back to the locker room and he was able to come back out, and it's like, okay, good, hopefully he's okay, but thank God he doesn't have to play anymore tonight because the Knicks are getting blown out. And he checks back in. Why? What are you doing? And this is a Tom Thibodeau thing. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. He plays his starters a lot of minutes. He really pushes these guys. And not all the injury problems the Knicks had last year were because of Tom Thibodeau, but I have to imagine that some of the wear and tear led to how injured the Knicks were at the end of last season. And this is another concern because they lack depth, and their coach has this philosophy of, hey, I'm just going to play my starters 1,000,000 minutes per game. And I worry about guys breaking down towards the end of a season. You're not going to be able to keep up defensively in general some of these great teams. Never mind if your guys are limping out there, if they're nowhere near 100%, and not many players are when it comes to the playoffs, but Knicks just feel like they deal with these issues constantly, and I worry about that with Tom Thibodeau. Why was Cat back in this game? There was no reason he should have been on the court to wrap this one up. As far as I can remember, I don't think I've made a Knicks specific video at all this season because I've been trying to figure out how I feel about them. Do I think they're contenders? Do I feel like they're a step away? What is going on with this team? And I finally feel like over the last couple of weeks, and specifically with this game, I know how I feel about them. They're not contenders. If you can't beat a single one of these top teams in 7 tries, I can't imagine you beating at least 2, if not 3 of them 12 times throughout 3 different series. I just can't see it being a reality right now. And sure, they're great. I'd say they're probably the 3rd best team in the Eastern Conference, but it's just levels between Cleveland and Boston and then where New York is at this point. And this is coming from someone who had the Knicks as a threat to win the East coming into the season. I put them in the Eastern Conference Finals. I just can't see them getting there because of the lack of defensive ability, because they can't beat the best, because I worry about the minutes that they play, the overall depth of this team. I think it's going to take another offseason to reshape the roster. The problem is they've given up so many assets to put this team together. Now, they still have some, but after the haul they threw to the Nets for Mikal Bridges, it's a lot slimmer of a war chest. You don't have nearly the same amount of draft capital. You have like some interesting young players with Deuce McBride, I guess, and I mean, maybe you could get a team to bite on Bacom Dadier or Tyler Kolek. But the Knicks, they are kind of committed to this thing very heavily, and it's not looked the best up until this point. I'm not saying it's looked bad, like they're still really good. They're just not a contender. And that's, of course, where the Knicks want to go when they went all in over the course of these past few moves. They traded for OG, they traded for McHale, they traded for Cat. This was supposed to be the year, and they're just not quite on that level yet. We'll have to see what they can do in the offseason, how they can reshape, remaneuver. And Leon Rose has done a great job with a lot of moves as executive. I mean, he brought in Jalen Brunson for what I thought was an overpay, and it's one of the best contracts in the league right now. He got Cat from Julius Randle, who has been having, again, a career year. He's done a good job. You just have to wonder if like the Mikal Bridges move was the right one. Should they have waited? And what can he do in the next couple seasons to get this Knicks team to where they want to go? Maybe I end up being wrong. Maybe the Knicks just flip the switch in the second half of the season, but I don't think it's coming. I think this team is great, but not elite. And there's only ever a few elite teams in the NBA. The Knicks just don't happen to be one of them so far this season. So yeah, those are my thoughts on New York right now. Let me know down below in the comments what your takeaways have been from this Knicks season so far. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Do you think they could win a championship or not? And what should they do from here? What are the moves they need to do going forward to become a contender if they're not there yet? If you think they are, let me know why I'm wrong in that regard. Leave a like, subscribe if you enjoyed, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. The Knicks will have a chance to try and prove me wrong and the world wrong. They play the Cavs, I think, 2 more times this season and the Celtics once. So if they could win at least 2 of those 3 games, I'm sure they'd love to win all 3, then maybe we could start to change our tune a little bit. But just so far, like a 7-game sample size isn't that crazy, but it's not like they've only lost 1, 2, 3 times to these teams and it's all been close. They've gotten annihilated in 7 straight matchups against the best in the NBA. It's pretty concerning. So yeah, appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, save back.